Let's talk some chess. I'm filming this while the World Chess Championship is on pause. It is a break day before the final classical match, the final classical game, Game 14, which will take place tomorrow on Saturday. Ding's playing with the white pieces, Jan with the black pieces, and then if it's a draw, we'll see Sunday the tiebreak to declare the World Chess Champion. But in the meantime, today's a rest day, but we still want to talk about some cool chess games. So this is a game from 1912. Edward Lasker with the white pieces and George Allen Thomas with the black pieces. This Edward Lasker, I looked it up, is actually not, he's distantly related to Emanuel Lasker, like a distant cousin, but not very closely related, just kind of a funny coincidence. So this is not Emanuel Lasker, this is Edward Lasker, 1912, played in London, and Lasker starts us off with d4. We have e6 from black, knight to f3 from white, and f5 from black. So already sort of a strange opening, and again, this is 1912, so don't judge these guys too much. We have knight to c3, knight to f6, and bishop to g5, pinning the knight to the queen. Black breaks the pin immediately with bishop to e7, and white is happy to trade here on f6. We then have e4 from white, so nice start from white. You have the two knights out, you have these two pawns attack, sort of controlling the center, whereas black has kind of this weird kind of like inverted pawn structure. So black makes the trade on e4, and white takes back with the knight. Black then plays b6, preparing to fianchetto this bishop and challenge this currently undefended knight. White actually just ignores that knight for now and advances his knight to e5. And here, black castles and allows this bishop to d3 move by white, which now puts some pressure on the h7 pawn if the knight on e4 moves. And here, black continues with the plan of fianchettoing the bishop. This was actually a mistake, though. The move that black needed to play here was bishop takes on e5, and then after white takes back on e5 with the pawn, black has this knight to c6 move, which comes with an attack on the pawn. And although it seems like this pawn should be easy to defend, it's in the center of the board, it's actually not. It's basically impossible to defend. If you play f4, you just get rook takes on f4, and then you're down a pawn and have a very threatening rook here. If you try to defend with the queen on h5, again, you're just going to get this rook lift to f5, which obviously forks the queen and the pawn, and the queen has to move. So instead, the proper move for white here is just g3, but then you get knight takes on e5, and now black is up a pawn. And after f4 by white, the knight can exchange with the bishop on g3, queen takes, and then the bishop is fianchettoed on a really nice diagonal, the longest diagonal, pinning the knight to the rook. White will castle queenside here to try to, bring the king to safety, but then you're just going to get this rook lift to f5 for black, ready to join in the attack, and this is just not a good position for white. So this is how black should have gotten into it, but that is not what happened. Black fianchettoed the bishop, and this allows white to play the very aggressive h5. And the queen to h5. And the reason that this is now allowed is because there is a knight on e5, and the knight is threatening to team up with the queen and deliver some really powerful attacks and combinations. And I think black was looking at, I'm not really sure what black was thinking here, but maybe black was looking at this f7 square or something similar, because here black played queen to e7. And I don't really see the idea behind this move. Again, the proper move for black is to capture the knight on e5 and go into a similar kind of line that we talked about before. But here, black plays queen to e7. And now, believe it or not, this definitely looks like a good attack for white, but it doesn't look like a mating attack. And in fact, it actually is. It's a forced mating line at about 9 moves. So see if you can take a moment and find the move to kick off what will be a beautiful mating pattern for white. Okay, so hopefully you found the correct sacrifice. It is queen to h7 check. And this is awesome. It's obviously a queen sacrifice, which are always super cool to see. And the king has no choice. There are no squares to go to. The f7 square is protected by the knight, and obviously the queen is covering h8. So king has to take queen on h7. But now you get this knight takes bishop on f7, and this is a double check. So don't forget the bishop on d3. Always easy to forget the long-range bishops. The bishop, there's now a discovered check from the bishop, and there is a check from the knight. Whenever there's a double check, your king has to move because you can't block or capture both of the pieces, so the king here moves to h6. And you might be saying, why not just retreat to h8? Well, if you retreat to h8, then knight to g6 is checkmate in 1 because the knight is delivering check, and the other knight on f6 is covering these two squares. So the king moves up to h6, but it should be fine, right? You have a queen in the vicinity, a rook kind of in the vicinity. Black is up material. This should be okay. But then you get this knight to g4 check. And now you can see the squares are starting to run out for the black king. All of these sort of squares are covered. If I click on the king, the only open square is this g5 square, and the king is forced to walk even further up the board to the 5th rank. And now things are starting to get a little bit hot in the kitchen for the king. White here now plays h4, drawing the king even further into the position, so the pawn is obviously protected by the rook. And again, the only square that the king can move to is f4. We have a similar move, g3, again, protected pawn, and again, only move for the king is f3, and now you just really put essentially the finishing touches on with bishop to e2 check. King is protecting the bishop. All of these retreat squares are blocked either by the pawns or by the knight. So this knight on f6 doing great work to keep the king in the position. King goes to g2, rook to h1 check. Rook is protected by the knight. King is forced now all the way to the 1st rank, so g1. And then the finishing touches, a really nice checkmating move. King to d2, checkmate. Exclam, I mean, just awesome to see, a discovered check on the 1st rank from the rook by the king. Some say he should have just castled here with checkmate. That would have been cooler, but in any case, just an amazing final picture. The black king all the way on the 1st rank, and just all the pieces working together to deliver an incredible checkmate. And if you saw this final picture, you'd probably think, wow, white is like a 2500 and black is like a 900. This is like, this is a terrible loss. How could anyone do this? But then if you actually go back to the position, this doesn't necessarily, I think we'd all be very surprised if we saw this position and knew it was going to end up with checkmate with a king on g1, right? This does not look like it's about to end in a just merciless king walk all the way up the board to finally have checkmate. So really fun position. Great that Lasker saw this, because we have this, in chess history, and it's a really fun checkmate to just go back and look at, and important to see, at least once. So hope you enjoyed it. Hope you are excited for the rest of the World Championship and getting ready for the good stuff, crowning a new world champion. So thanks for watching. Drop a like and a subscribe, and we'll see you next time.